I was folding Mason's neatly pressed school uniform when I heard a thud upstairs. It was the sound of a suitcase hitting the bedroom floor, sharp and hollow, echoing through our creaky old Victorian home in Springfield. At 67, I had learned to trust my gut when trouble was brewing. That same instinct that once let me spot cheating students or notice when a child needed help was now screaming at me, loud and insistent. I set Mason's white shirt aside and started up the worn staircase. Craig's door stood open, and there he was, throwing clothes into a black travel bag like the house was on fire. Nothing folded, nothing organized, just handfuls of fabric shoved inside. On his unmade bed sat his work laptop, its screen glowing with half a dozen browser windows. "Going somewhere?" I asked, standing in the doorway. He didn't look at me. "Business trip, last minute." The lie hung in the air, heavy and sour. Craig did tech support at a tiny computer repair shop. They barely sent him downtown, let alone on business trips. "How long will you be gone?" I asked. "Not sure." He swept his toiletries into the bag, knocking over a photo of Linda cradling newborn Mason. The glass cracked across the wood floor, and Craig stepped right over it. My chest ached. That picture had sat there since the day Linda died giving birth to Mason. Craig used to kiss his fingers and touch that frame every night before bed. Now he walked past it like it was garbage. "Craig, stop," I said, moving into the room. "Talk to me. What's really going on?" At last, he met my eyes, and what I saw chilled me. Nothing. No guilt, no sorrow, no trace of the man I knew, just a cold determination, and maybe, almost, relief. "I'm leaving, Mom," he said flatly. "Should have done it years ago." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. For over a decade I had been the one raising Mason, holding together a broken family with my pension and every ounce of love I had, all the while Craig disappeared behind glowing screens and late-night projects I never asked about. "What about Mason?" I whispered. "He's better off with you." "Always has been." He yanked the zipper closed, the sound loud enough to echo through the house and, I feared, into Mason's room where he was supposed to be doing homework. "You can't just walk away from your son." "I'm not walking away," Craig said coldly. "I'm leaving him with the only parent he's ever really had." The cruelty of it left me speechless. He hoisted the suitcase and brushed past me toward the stairs. "Craig, please," I begged, grabbing his arm. "Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. We're family." He shook me off like I was nothing more than a stranger in his way. "There is no family, Mom. Just you and Mason playing house while I cover the bills." "Well, now you can figure that out on your own." My blood turned cold. "What does that mean?" I asked, but he was already stomping down the stairs, dragging the suitcase behind him. I hurried after him, my slippers snagging on the worn runner. In the living room, Mason sat at the old desk, working through algebra problems. He looked up when we entered, his sharp brown eyes catching both his father's suitcase and the panic on my face. "Going somewhere, Dad?" he asked. Craig hesitated at the door for just a second. I thought I saw his resolve weaken as he looked at his son. Mason had grown tall and lean, like Craig had been at that age, but with Linda's quiet intensity. "I need some time away, buddy," Craig said. "Grandma will take care of you." "For how long?" Mason asked. "I don't know yet." Mason nodded once, calm and steady, like he was storing the information for later. "Okay." The acceptance in his voice broke my heart. No tears, no pleas for his father to stay, just a quiet resignation, as if he'd been expecting this. Craig opened the front door, and a blast of October air rushed into the house. "I'll call when I'm settled." "Where are you going?" I asked. "Somewhere I can breathe again." Then the door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Through the window, I watched him load the suitcase into his silver Honda and drive away from the only home Mason had ever known. Mason and I stood in the heavy silence that followed. The grandfather clock ticked in the corner. The furnace rumbled to life. Outside, a car engine faded into the night. "Is he coming back?" Mason asked quietly. I wanted to lie, but I knew my grandson was too sharp for that. "I don't think so, sweetheart." He closed his math book carefully, stacking it with the others. Then he looked at me with an expression far too old for his young face. "Grandma, don't worry. I'll handle this." The certainty in his tone startled me. "Handle what?" "You're only 13. But he was already heading up the stairs, his books tucked under his arm. "I need to check our bank accounts first," he said over his shoulder. "Then we'll know what we're really facing." Bank accounts. My 13-year-old grandson was talking about checking bank accounts. Mason, wait, but he was already gone, leaving me in a house that suddenly felt too big and unbearably empty. That first night without Craig, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house groan and settle in the dark. Every sound felt magnified, every creak like a warning. Around midnight, I heard the faint clicking of computer keys coming from Mason's room. I slipped on my robe and padded down the hall. Light glowed from beneath his door, the steady rhythm of typing spilling into the hallway. I knocked softly. "Mason, it's past midnight, sweetheart." "Come in, Grandma," he called. I pushed the door open and found him at his desk, still dressed, surrounded by notebooks and scattered papers. His laptop lit up the room with glowing windows I couldn't begin to understand. "What are you doing up so late?" I asked. "Research." He gestured at the papers spread out. "I've been tracing Dad's digital footprints." Digital footprints. I stepped closer, squinting at the pages, bank statements, credit reports, even printed emails, all with our family name on them. "Mason, where did you get this?" "Dad isn't very careful with passwords," he said matter-of-factly. He tapped a few keys, and a new window popped open. Craig's email inbox. "He uses the same password for everything. Linda 2010, the year they got married." My stomach lurched. "You hacked into your father's email." "Not hacked. Logged in." He left the door wide open. "Mason." "Grandma, sit down. What I found is worse than you think." My knees wobbled as I sank into the chair beside him. "How bad?" He handed me a bank statement with my name at the top. I stared at the balance and blinked hard, certain I was misreading it. $12. That can't be right. "It's right," he said quietly. "Dad didn't just take a little when he left. He's been draining everything for months." The paper trembled in my hands. My life savings, decades of teaching reduced to pocket change. "What about your college fund?" I whispered. Mason handed me another page. The account that should have held $43,000 showed zero. "No," I gasped. "That money was protected. It was in a special education fund." "Not anymore." Mason pulled up another file. 3 weeks ago, Dad moved it into his personal account, then transferred it somewhere else. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal. Somewhere else. Where? That's what took me so long. Mason said, fingers flying across the keyboard. He's been working with someone. Her name's Vanessa Torres. She's with Meridian Financial downtown. A social media profile popped onto the screen. Dark hair, bright smile, vacation photos, motivational quotes. She's his girlfriend. And she's been helping him set up accounts, move money, even apply for loans in our names. Mason's jaw tightened, and anger too heavy for a boy his age. Grandma, they've been planning this for months. The room spun. What kind of loans? Mason clicked another document. A $30,000 personal loan using your name and social security number. A $15,000 credit card in my name, with a fake age of 25. My throat closed. My own son stole my identity and his child's to run off with another woman. Mason opened a folder labeled Evidence. The screen filled with files, bank records, emails between Craig and Vanessa, screenshots of transfers. They were planning to vanish together, Mason said. New city, new names, new lives, with our money. I pressed my hand to my chest, struggling to breathe. Mason's eyes held a calm fire I'd never seen before. Not anymore, he said quietly. Their plan hit a wall today. Before I could ask what he meant, his laptop chimed with a new email. He glanced at the screen and gave a faint, almost satisfied smile. That would be Dad's bank, calling about the fraud alert I filed this afternoon. You filed a fraud alert. My voice cracked. I filed several things. Fraud alerts, identity theft reports, complaints with the State Banking Commission. He leaned back in his chair. I also sent Vanessa's employer some very interesting files about her unauthorized access to client accounts. My mouth fell open. Mason, what have you done? I protected us. His tone was steady, like he was reciting a homework answer. Dad thought he could drain everything and walk away clean. He thought we were helpless. He was wrong. The laptop chimed again. Mason checked the email and his smile widened. That's confirmation that Vanessa Torres has been suspended from Meridian pending an investigation. I felt dizzy. While I was lying awake in fear, my grandson had been fighting back in ways I couldn't imagine. How do you even know how to do all this? I asked. The same internet that taught Dad how to commit fraud taught me how to stop it, he said simply. He pointed to the folder labeled Evidence. I documented every transfer, every fake signature, every shady loan. We have proof, Grandma. Enough to bring them both down. I stared at the neat piles of papers, the screenshots, the methodical order. My grandson wasn't just a boy anymore, he had become our protector. What happens now? I whispered. Mason began stacking papers into tidy piles. Now we wait. Dad's accounts are frozen. Vanessa's career is finished. Their loan applications are being flagged left and right. He paused, and for a moment, he looked like the child he still was. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to get our money back. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and scrambled eggs. Mason was already dressed for school, 2 plates set neatly on the kitchen table. You cooked breakfast? I asked, still groggy. You need to eat, he said. We both need our strength today. He poured orange juice into my glass with a careful hand, more like an adult than a 13-year-old. I've been thinking about our next steps. I sat down, amazed at how normal the moment felt despite the chaos swirling around us. What kind of steps? Mason pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table. I stayed up digging into Vanessa's background. What I found, it's disturbing, but it'll help us." Inside was what looked like a police report. "Vanessa Torres has a history of financial scams," Mason explained. "Back in Toledo, when she worked at Premier Investment Services." My coffee cooled as I read the charges: embezzlement, falsified statements, unauthorized access to accounts. "She was arrested?" I asked. "Charged," Mason said. "But she cut a deal, paid restitution, and resigned. Case was dropped." He flipped to another page. "Then she came here to Springfield and got hired at Meridian. They never checked her record properly." My hands shook. "How did you find this?" "Court records are public. You just have to know where to look." His eyes burned with quiet intensity. "But here's the worst part. She's been stealing from her current clients too." He spread out more papers: bank statements, transfers, names I didn't know. "Mason, where did you get these?" "She uses the same password strategy as Dad. Once I cracked her pattern, I got into her work accounts." I froze, staring at him. "She's been stealing from elderly people, Grandma. People your age, people who trusted her with their retirement." My chest tightened as I flipped through the evidence. "Frances Miller, 82 years old," Mason read aloud. "Missing $30,000 from her pension." "Richard Hayes, 74, half his life savings gone." Page after page, victim after victim. "This is horrible," I whispered. "It gets worse," Mason said, pulling his laptop closer. "Dad knew about it. He was helping her cover her tracks in exchange for her help with our money." On the screen were emails between Craig and Vanessa, spelling out how to hide funds, how to trick clients into thinking losses were market-related. My son's name on messages that mapped out how to steal from the vulnerable. He even helped her figure out which clients were easiest targets. Mason said grimly. I pushed my breakfast aside, my stomach churning. Craig hadn't just betrayed us. He had betrayed strangers good, trusting people just to line his pockets. "How many?" I asked hoarsely. "I've found 17 victims so far," Mason said. "Total losses, over $400,000. He shut the laptop and looked me dead in the eye. "But I think I can help them get it back." "How?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The same way I'm going to help us," Mason said. "I documented everything, every fake account, every forged paper, every dollar that moved. I know where it all went." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the bright fall morning, with the focus of a soldier surveying a battlefield. "Yesterday I stopped them from doing more damage. Today, I start the recovery process." "Recovery process," I echoed. "I'm going to contact the victims, show them proof of what happened, help them file official complaints with the right people. Make sure Dad and Vanessa face consequences for every single person they hurt." His voice was steady, but I felt the weight pressing down on him. "Mason, that's too much for someone your age." "Age doesn't matter if you have the skills and the evidence," he said simply, flipping open his laptop again. "Besides, someone has to do it. These families trusted Vanessa. They deserve the truth." He pulled up a spreadsheet full of names and dollar amounts. "Mrs. Miller doesn't even know her money's gone. Vanessa's been sending her fake statements showing gains. Mr. Hayes thinks he just made a bad investment. In reality, she siphoned it into her own account." I felt sick. "How will you tell them?" "Very carefully," Mason said. "I can't just call them up and say their advisor's a thief. I'm going to send anonymous packages." "Anonymous?" "Yes. Complete documentation of what happened. step-by-step instructions on reporting the crimes, and contact info for free legal aid. I stared at my grandson calm, methodical, precise, organizing evidence against criminals with the same focus he used for his schoolwork. "What about us? Our money?" I asked quietly. "That's more complicated," Mason admitted, "because Dad technically had access to some of our accounts. But those fake loans in our names, that's outright fraud." He opened another folder. "I already filed the disputes. The investigation will take weeks, but they should clear our names and wipe those debts. And the savings, that'll take longer," Mason said. "But if I trace the transfers and prove the intent was illegal, we can push for restitution when Vanessa goes to prison." His eyes hardened. "She is going to prison, Grandma. I've got enough evidence to bury her 10 times over. The question is whether Dad will cooperate or go down with her." He shut the laptop and looked at me with those serious brown eyes that reminded me so much of Linda. "Grandma, you need to be ready. Once the police get involved, once lawyers start asking questions, people are going to want to know how a 13-year-old found all this." "What will I say?" I asked. "The truth. That Dad and Vanessa were sloppy, and I was smart enough to record everything before they could cover their tracks." He paused, thoughtful. "But people will be impressed and scared by what I can do." "Are you scared of me?" I reached across the table, my hand trembling. "No," I said softly. He tilted his head, thinking. "I'm not scared either. I'm angry. And anger is better than fear when you're protecting your family." He swung his backpack onto his shoulder. "I should get going. Chemistry test today. Gotta keep my grades up while I'm shutting down financial criminals." The casual way he said it almost made me laugh. "Mason," I whispered. He stopped in the doorway. "I'm proud of you. I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast." He smiled faintly. "I didn't grow up fast, Grandma. I just realized I already was." And then he was gone, off to school like it was any other day. 3 days later, I sat at the kitchen table sorting bills when the phone rang. Craig's number flashed on the caller ID. My heart jumped despite everything. "Hello, Mom." His voice came strained and desperate in a way I'd never heard before. "We need to talk." "You want to talk now?" I asked coldly. "Something's wrong. Everything's falling apart. Someone's targeting me and Vanessa." I glanced up the stairs where Mason was supposed to be doing homework. The faint tapping of keys drifted down as steady as always. "What do you mean, targeting? My accounts are frozen. The cops came to my motel asking questions about identity theft. Vanessa got fired, and now she's under investigation by the State Banking Commission." His words spilled out in a rush. "Mom, whoever's doing this knows everything. They've got records of things that should be private." "Maybe your private things weren't as private as you thought," I said evenly. "This isn't funny. They've got our emails, our bank records, even phone calls. They sent Vanessa's boss a whole file on her." "Mom, this is serious." I felt a strange mix of pride and worrying. Craig thought he was being hunted by some faceless hacker. He had no idea it was his own son. "Maybe this is just consequences catching up with you," I said. "No, this is coordinated. Someone with real skills is out to destroy us." His voice cracked. "Mom, I think they might come after you and Mason next. You need to be careful." The irony almost made me laugh. Craig warning me about the person actually protecting us. "Where are you staying?" I asked. "A motel outside town. We had to pay cash. Our cards don't work." He sighed heavily. Mom, I know I messed up. I hurt you and Mason, but I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean it to go? I asked sharply. I was just going to borrow the money. Vanessa had this investment plan, guaranteed returns. We would have paid everything back with interest. The tired lie of every con artist. Craig, you drained Mason's college fund. You took loans in our names. That's not borrowing. That's fraud. I know, he pleaded. But, Mom, listen, whoever's doing this isn't just exposing us. They're sabotaging us. Our car got repossessed. The apartment we were about to rent fell through because someone tipped off the landlord. We're being hunted. Maybe you should turn yourself in, I said. Turn myself in for what? Borrowing from family. Some of it isn't even illegal. His voice rose in anger. What about the elderly clients Vanessa stole from? Silence stretched on the line. How do you know about that? He asked finally, suspicion thick in his voice. The same way the police know. The same way her boss knows. Craig, you didn't just betray your family. You helped her rob innocent people. She's not a criminal, he snapped. She just made mistakes. We both did. We were trying to start over. From upstairs, the typing suddenly stopped. A moment later, Mason's footsteps sounded on the stairs. I spoke firmly into the phone. Craig, reality is here whether you like it or not. Vanessa's going to prison for embezzlement, and you'll face charges too. Mason and I will rebuild without you. Prison. Craig's voice jumped. Nobody's going to prison. This is all blown out of proportion. Mason appeared in the kitchen doorway, laptop in hand. He held up the screen for me to see. A news alert blared across it. Local financial advisor arrested in embezzlement scheme. I caught my breath. Craig, maybe you should turn on the news. Why? Because your girlfriend was arrested this morning. The sound he made was somewhere between a sob and a scream. That's impossible. She was just here an hour ago. We were planning our next move. Where is here, Craig? I asked quietly. The Sunset Motel on Route 9, Room 12, he blurted, panic flooding his words. Mom, if they've got her, I'm next. I need help. I need money to get out of town. Mason scribbled a note on a pad and slid it to me. Keep him talking. Police are 5 minutes away. My pulse hammered in my ears. Craig, I said, stalling for time. Running won't solve anything. It's the only way to stay out of prison. Mom, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm your son. Doesn't that count for something? It counted when you were the boy I raised. I answered, my voice breaking. The man on this phone is a stranger who stole from his child and left us with $12. Mom, 12, no, I didn't take everything, he stammered. You took everything, Craig, our savings, Mason's future, even Linda's memorial fund. I can fix it, he begged. Once this blows over, I'll get another job. I'll pay it back. How do you pay back money you helped steal from 17 elderly people? I asked, cutting him off. Another long silence. How do you know the exact number? He asked suspiciously. Because the evidence is out now, I said. Police, lawyers, victims, everyone knows. His voice darkened. Someone's feeding you information. Did you hire an investigator? I didn't need to. You and Vanessa left digital fingerprints everywhere. Mom, he hissed, you barely know how to check email. How would you know about digital fingerprints? Mason moved to the window, holding up 3 fingers. Then two, then one. I swallowed hard. Maybe I'm not as helpless as you thought. On the line, Craig's voice wavered. Mom, whoever's helping you, they're dangerous. They've destroyed my life. They've destroyed Vanessa's, and they won't stop until. His words cut off. Muffled voices echoed in the background. The clink of handcuffs. A firm voice reading writes, Craig Bennett, you're under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit embezzlement. The line went dead. Mason shut his laptop and sat across from me. Is it over? I whispered. The arrests are over, he said calmly. Now the recovery begins. I looked at him, this boy who had dismantled to criminals while still worrying about his chemistry grade, and realized Craig never saw it coming. He thought he was being hunted by a stranger. He never suspected it was his own son. 6 months later, I was at the kitchen table with a paperback novel when Mason burst through the door, his backpack thudding to the floor. Grandma, look at this, he said, waving an official-looking envelope. He tore it open, nearly bouncing with excitement. It's from the district attorney's office. I set my book aside, my pulse quickening as I unfolded the letter. Restitution payment. I read aloud. $18,400. That's from Vanessa's assets, Mason explained, grinning. They sold her car, her jewelry, liquidated investments she made with stolen money. We're getting back almost half of what Dad took. I exhaled shakily. Not everything, but enough to breathe again, enough to start rebuilding Mason's college fund. What about the other families? I asked. Mrs. Miller got $22,000 back. Mr. Hayes got his full amount because they caught Vanessa before she could move it. 17 families, each receiving at least part of what was stolen. Mason sat across from me, satisfaction glowing in his eyes. Not everything, but something. I folded the letter, still hardly believing it was real. And your father? I asked quietly. Mason's expression sobered. 5 years in federal prison. He pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence. His lawyer says maybe 4 with good behavior. For years, part of me was relieved. Part of me wondered if it was nearly enough. How do you feel about that? I asked him. Like justice happened, he said after a moment. Not revenge, just consequences. Then he pulled his laptop from his bag, eyes gleaming. But Grandma, I want to show you something else. The screen lit up with a polished website. Family Financial Protection Services, keeping families safe from fraud. Mason, what is this? Remember how I said I wanted to help other families? I've been working on this for months. I've already helped 12 families recover stolen money, and I'm teaching people how to protect themselves. The site was professional, with services, testimonials, resources. At the bottom was the founder's name, M. Bennett, Certified Financial Crime Prevention Specialist. Certified by who? I asked. The National Association of Financial Crime Investigators. I took their course and passed the exam. Pretty sure I'm the youngest certified in the country. I stared at him, my grandson who'd turned our worst nightmare into a mission. Are you making money from this? Some, he admitted. Enough to help with expenses and rebuild my college fund. But that's not why I do it. I do it because I know what it feels like to be betrayed and what it feels like to fight back. A soft chime from his laptop pulled his attention. I need to take this call, he said. It's a family in Oregon. Their teenage son's been stealing his grandmother's Social Security checks. He started up the stairs, but I caught his hand. Mason, Are you happy? Truly happy? He looked at me with those steady brown eyes that reminded me so much of Linda. I'm proud, Grandma, proud of what we survived, of what I can do now, of how strong we've become. Dad thought leaving us would break us. Instead, it showed us what we're made of. He squeezed my hand and went upstairs, already shifting into professional mode. I sat in the quiet kitchen, reflecting on how much had changed. We'd moved to a smaller house across town, one that felt more like home than the old Victorian ever did. I'd gone back to substitute teaching a few days a week, not because we desperately needed the money anymore, but because I missed being with students. Mason had shot up 3 inches, carrying himself with the calm of someone who had faced real danger and won. He still earned straight A's, still helped with dinner, still kissed my cheek goodnight. But he also ran a business, spoke at community centers, and consulted with law enforcement about online crime. At 13, he'd become someone I looked up to. The phone rang, breaking my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and froze. Springfield Correctional Facility. Craig. The phone rang 6 times before rolling to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. I picked it up, then set it down without answering. Some bridges, once burned, stay that way. Some forgiveness has to be earned, and some consequences last exactly as long as they should. Upstairs, I heard Mason's voice, calm and sure, walking another family through the steps of protecting themselves. When someone hurts your family, you don't just survive, you make sure they can't hurt anyone else's family either. I smiled faintly and went back to grading essays, listening to the sound of justice being carried out one phone call at a time.